Chapter 1. The Counterattack in Dobropolye, the beginning of a reverse game. Introduction, straight to the point. On August 19, 2025, news from the eastern Ukrainian front once again heated up world public opinion by the hour. Kiev decided to launch a strong counterattack in the Dobropolye area, a small place but of extremely great strategic value in the entire war situation. The story seemed to be just a local battle, but in fact, it was a turning point for the entire campaign. It is said that war is not only decided by big cities, but sometimes by a small village located right at the intersection. Dobropolye is a typical example. To understand why Kiev chose Dobropolye as the place to bet, we need to go straight to the dissection. The strategic context, the reasons for this counterattack, and most importantly, whether this move is enough to turn the tide as the Kiev government claims. Dobropolye, a small village on the map, but a trump card on the chessboard. Dobropolye is an area located in the Donetsk region, not a big city like Pakrovsk or Seversk, but located at an important gateway connecting many logistics routes. If war is likened to a chess game, then Dobropolye is like a square located right in the center of the board, where the queen can roam. From here, the routes can stretch north to control Seversk, swing west to protect Pakrovsk, or go straight to the south, where Russia is trying to expand its control. Therefore, controlling Dobropolye is like controlling the stop valve of the entire defense system. Many Western analysts even compare Dobropolye to Bastogne in World War II, a small town in Belgium where the U.S. Army fought to the death, stopping the German advance in the Battle of Ardennes. If Bastogne fell, the entire Allied front line could be cut off. Today, if Dobropolye fell into Russian hands, Kiev would face a similar risk. The line would be broken. Reasons for the counterattack. Kiev has no way back. There are many reasons why Kiev was forced to choose this moment to launch a counterattack in Dobropolye. Pressure from the fighting around Pakrovsk. After many weeks, Russia has continuously pressed Pakrovsk, Ukraine's important strategic center in Donetsk. If Pakrovsk falls, the Russian army will have the opportunity to advance further. Dobropolye, therefore, becomes a secondary shield that Kiev can't afford to lose. Internal morale and confidence. After a series of losses, the morale of the Ukrainian army shows signs of wavering. Kiev needs a victory, even a small one, to encourage its soldiers. The battle at Dobropolye is an opportunity to create a moral victory. Pressure from the Western allies. Not only the war on the ground, but also the diplomatic war is taking place fiercely. Western countries are constantly urging Ukraine to prove that billions of dollars of military aid are meaningful. A successful counterattack at Dobropolye will be the evidence Kiev wants to send. Timing factor. Russia is dispersing its forces on many fronts, from Seversk to the south. This is the time Kiev can take advantage of to launch a surprise attack to regain local dominance. To summarize, it can be said that Dobropolye is not only a battlefield, but also a stage for Kiev to prove that they are still capable of taking the initiative. Counterattack. Kiev goes all out in Dobropolye. According to information from the front, Kiev has deployed elite forces, including mechanized units and supporting artillery, to push the Russians back from the heights around Dobropolye. Some journalists near the area said that in recent days, the sky over Dobropolye has continuously been lit up by artillery shells and rockets. The image has been likened to a fireworks of death, where each volley of bullets doesn't bring joy, but destruction. According to reports, the Ukrainian army has recaptured a number of key positions, causing Russia's advance in the area to slow down. However, this victory is not yet complete. Many heights are still in Russian hands, and fighting is expected to continue. For example, in a battle near a small village near Dobropolye, the Ukrainian forces suddenly counterattacked at dawn, catching the Russian unit by surprise. The image is reminiscent of the guerrilla battles in Vietnamese history, where the weak fight the strong but know how to choose the right time. However, the big difference is here that both sides possess extremely strong firepower, so the level of brutality is many times higher. The significance of Dobropolye in the overall strategy. The key point is, Dobropolye is not just a battlefield, but a message. For the Ukrainian army, holding Dobropolye means holding the gateway of Pakharovsk and thereby protecting the entire western wing of Donetsk. For the Ukrainian people, a victory in Dobropolye, even a small one, can also become a symbol, just as the recapture of Kherson in 2022 lifted the spirit of the whole country. For the West, it is proof that aid is not in vain. Kiev wants to send the message, we still have enough strength to counterattack. For Russia, the loss of Dobropolye would be an unacceptable defeat because it would weaken the battle is building. It can be said that Dobropolye is the key to open or close many other doors. Mildly humorous satire. If viewed from another angle, Dobropolye is like a small pizza slice on the banquet table, but it makes both diners, Ukraine and Russia, fight fiercely. Outsiders will wonder, why not choose a bigger slice? But in reality, sometimes just a small slice decides whether the whole party is successful or not. This story is similar to football. Sometimes you play very well the whole match, but only a goal in the last minute will decide. Dobropolye is the 90th minute goal that both teams want to score. End of Chapter 1. Dobropolye, a name that seems to be unknown on the map, has suddenly become the center of global attention. Kiev's counterattack here is not just a matter of winning or losing a battle, but a test for the entire campaign. Can Ukraine turn Dobropolye into the bastion of the 21st century, or will it become a trap that will exhaust them even more? The answer will be written in the following developments. In Chapter 2, we will analyze in depth Russia's response to this counterattack, the strategic calculations hidden behind the surface, and Kiev's real ability to turn the tables. Chapter 2. The Battle of Dobropolye, where strategic intentions are exposed. When mentioning the name Dobropolye, many military observers will easily ignore it because it's not a large-scale city like Kiev, Kharkiv, or Odessa. But in the strategic map of the Ukraine war, Dobropolye has become a key point, like a small fuse that can ignite a bomb. This chapter will analyze why Kiev is determined to change the situation in this area at all costs, as well as the political, military, and social consequences of the battle. 1. Strategic context. Why is Dobropolye so important? First of all, it is necessary to place Dobropolye in the current war coordinate system. This city is located northwest of Donetsk, not far from the main battle line. It is not only the gateway to the Donbass industrial regions, but also one of the logistics transit points. Whoever controls Dobropolye will have an important leverage to advance deeper into major cities or defend the northern flank of Donetsk. In the history of war, there are many small places that have become decisive turning points. For example, in World War II, Stalingrad was originally just an industrial city on the banks of the Volga River. But when the two sides rushed into fierce fighting there, it became a symbol of survival. Dobropolye today has a similar appearance. For Kiev, losing Dobropolye means exposing a dangerous defensive gap. For Moscow, controlling the city will create conditions for expanding its influence in the entire Donbass. In history, Kiev has definitely bet on small places, sometimes successfully. Perhaps Kiev saw Dobropolye as the gauge in Russia's advance and hoped to reverse the situation there. Kiev's counterattack challenges its biggest challenge. Kiev's counterattack in Dobropolye was not only a purely military decision, but also a political message. After months of constant pressure in Pakharovsk, Seversk, and the eastern regions, The Ukrainian leadership knew that without some kind of victory to boost the morale of the population and maintain the confidence of the West, the situation would become increasingly unfavorable.
4. Weapons, tactics, and telling numbers. According to many international sources, Ukraine has introduced many types of modern weapons provided by the West into the Dobropolye campaign. These include self-propelled artillery, armored vehicles, and especially mobile air defense systems. Kiev's tactics are to use fast-moving forces, strike deeply, and then immediately retreat to avoid concentrated fire from Russia. In contrast, Russia applies the familiar wear and tear tactic, using artillery and air force fire to gradually wear down the enemy, then sending in infantry and tanks. This is the way Russia successfully applied at Bakhmut, where Ukraine finally had to retreat after months of resistance. The numbers show the ferocity. In just the first 48 hours at Dobropolye, it is estimated that hundreds of soldiers on both sides were killed or wounded. These numbers may not be as large as previous battles, but given Ukraine's limited resources, it is a loss that is difficult to make up. 5. Political and media significance. One thing to emphasize: the war in Ukraine is not only taking place on the battlefield, but also on the media front. For Kiev, any victory, no matter how small, can be exaggerated as a feat to call for aid. For Moscow, any captured city will be promoted as a demonstration of Russian military power. Dobropolye is a stage for information warfare. Immediately after the counterattack, the Ukrainian media released many images and videos showing their soldiers advancing, planting flags on their positions. Meanwhile, Russian media claimed that they had broken the enemy's attacks and inflicted heavy losses on the enemy. International citizens, who have difficulty accessing objective facts from the battlefield, can only follow such contradictory information. 6. Impact on civilians and humanitarians. One thing that cannot be ignored: Dobropolye is originally home to tens of thousands of civilians. When the war broke out, they became direct victims. Houses were destroyed, infrastructure was paralyzed, and thousands of people were forced to evacuate. The images of people crowded into evacuation buses remind people of scenes from major wars of the last century. War is not just arrows on a map. It is broken families, children who have lost their homes, and people who have to leave their homeland. This is also the dark side that makes any victory on the battlefield bitter. 7. Lessons from Dobropolye for the future. Dobropolye shows one thing clearly: the war in Ukraine has entered a phase where every town, every small city can become the turning table of history. Both Kiev and Moscow are no longer capable of launching decisive blows on a large scale, so they concentrate their strength on each hotspot. This makes the situation more and more persistent, fierce, and unpredictable. In the long run, the war in Dobropolye also reminds the world that in every conflict, the price to pay is always human life. Politicians can calculate, the military can plan, but in the end, ordinary people are the ones who suffer. Chapter 3. Strategic significance and global implications of the Battle of Dobropolye. 1. Strategic significance of Dobropolye in the Ukraine war situation. Dobropolye, a small town in Donetsk, may not seem to have much significance at first. However, in the context of the Ukraine-Russia war, it is like an important knot on the chessboard. Dobropolye is located in the intermediate area with a traffic route connecting Pokrovsk with the western regions of Donetsk. If one side controls this place, one side can open a supply corridor, deploy artillery, and establish solid defense lines. Conversely, if it loses, the entire situation in Pokrovsk will be threatened. An easy example: imagine a chessboard. Sometimes it is not the queen or the rook that decides the game, but a small pawn in the right position. Dobropolye is that pawn. It is small, but holds a key position. Ukraine understands this well. If they lose here, their ability to defend Pokrovsk will be severely reduced. On the contrary, if they hold on, or even successfully counterattack, Kiev can reverse the situation, turning the defensive position into an offensive one. 3. Kiev's tactics are to use fast-moving forces, strike deeply, and then immediately retreat to avoid concentrated fire from Russia. In contrast,
Russia applies the familiar wear and tear tactic, using artillery and air force fire to gradually wear down the enemy, then sending in infantry and tanks. This is the way Russia successfully applied at Bakhmut, where Ukraine finally had to retreat after months of resistance. The numbers show the ferocity. In just the first 48 hours at Dobropolye, it is estimated that hundreds of soldiers on both sides were killed or wounded. These numbers may not be as large as previous battles, but given Ukraine's limited resources, it is a loss that is difficult to make up. 4. Impact on civilians and humanitarians. One thing that cannot be ignored. Dobropolye is originally home to tens of thousands of civilians. When the war broke out, they became direct victims. Houses were destroyed, infrastructure was paralyzed, and thousands of people were forced to evacuate. The images of people crowded into evacuation buses remind people of scenes from major wars of the last century. War is not just arrows. It is broken families, children who have lost their homes, and people who have to leave their homeland. This is also the dark side that makes any victory on the battlefield bitter. 7. Lessons from Dobropolye for the future. Dobropolye shows one thing clearly. The war in Ukraine has entered a phase where every town, every small city can become the turning table of history. Both Kiev and Moscow are no longer capable of launching decisive blows on a large scale, so they concentrate their strength on each hotspot. This makes the situation more and more persistent, fierce, and unpredictable. In the long run, the war in Dobropolye also reminds the world that in every conflict, the price to pay is always human life. Politicians can calculate, the military can plan, but in the end, ordinary people are the ones who suffer. Chapter 3. Strategic Significance and Global Implications of the Battle of Dobropolye. 1. Strategic significance of Dobropolye in the Ukraine war situation. Dobropolye, a small town in Donetsk, may not seem to have much significance at first. However, in the context of the Ukraine-Russia war, it is like an important knot on the chessboard. Dobropolye is located in the intermediate area with a traffic route connecting Pokrovsk with the western regions of Donetsk. If one side controls this place, one side can open a supply corridor, deploy artillery, and establish solid defense lines. On the contrary, if it loses, the entire situation in Pokrovsk will be threatened. An easy example, imagine a chessboard. Sometimes it is not the queen or the rook that decides the game, but a small pawn in the right position. Dobropolye is that pawn. It is small, but holds a key position. Ukraine understands this well. If they lose here, their ability to defend Pokrovsk will be severely reduced. On the contrary, if they hold on, or even successfully counterattack, Kiev can reverse the situation, turning the defensive position into an offensive one. 2. Why did Kiev decide to turn the tables? The decision to counterattack in Dobropolye was not accidental. There are 3 main reasons. First, the political spiritual factor. After weeks of Russian pressure, Ukraine needed a victory to strengthen the morale of its soldiers and public opinion at home. Dobropolye became a suitable target to create a push. Second, the strategic terrain factor. If Russia were allowed to advance further in Donetsk, the entire Pokrovsk would be at risk of being surrounded. Ukraine would be forced to counterattack from the outside. Third, the international factor. Ukraine is receiving new aid from the West, especially long-range weapons and air defense systems. This is an opportunity for Kyiv to prove that it can use that support effectively. Ukraine's situation can be imagined as a boxer. After being cornered for many rounds, he must launch a powerful counterattack to show the audience and the referee that he is still capable of fighting. 3. Russia's response and the new dilemma. Russia cannot take this counterattack lightly. For them, Dobropolye is an important springboard to approach Pokrovsk. If they fail here, the entire eastern campaign may be slowed down. On the other hand, Russia also understands that if Ukraine takes the airwaves with a victory, international public opinion will be favorable to Kyiv. So Russia has increased artillery, deployed more drones, and tightened its logistics lines. An easy illustration, like a Go match, when a group of troops is surrounded by an opponent, Russia is forced to consolidate the life of the Dobropolye area instead of expanding in another direction. That makes the overall strategy dispersed. 4. Implications for the overall war. The Battle of Dobropolye may be a small turning point, but the impact is not small at all. Militarily, if Ukraine is successful, they can prolong the war, forcing Russia to disperse its forces while opening up opportunities for counterattacks in many other directions. Politically, victory will give Kiev more confidence to convince the West to continue providing aid. Diplomatically, it also sends a message that Ukraine is not a defensive party, but is still actively looking for ways to turn the situation around. A Western observer once said, "Dobropolye is not Stalingrad, but it can be the small key that opens the big door in the current war." 5. Impact on the world. Not only
Ukraine and Russia, but the whole world is watching. The reason is Europe is worried about energy. If Ukraine holds the position, the risk of Russia using war to pressure gas will be limited. The United States and NATO need to prove that their aid is not in vain. A victory in Dobropolye will help them strengthen their arguments with voters and parliaments. Other countries such as China, India, or African countries are watching to assess whether Russia still has the upper hand. This battle, therefore, is not just within Ukraine's borders. It is part of the global contest between great powers. The end. Dobropolye, where a pawn can turn the board. The Battle of Dobropolye on August 19, 2025 may go down in history as proof that in war, sometimes a small point can have a big impact. Kiev was determined to turn the tables here. Whether successful or not, that decision showed that Ukraine was not resigned to being passive, but was still actively looking for ways to turn the situation around. Russia, of course, will not give up easily. The battle at Dobropolye will therefore be tense, fierce, even lasting for days, weeks. But whatever the outcome, this battle sent a strong message. The war in Ukraine will not end easily, and every town, every route can become the focus of the world. To summarize the main content, Dobropolye is an important strategic position in Donetsk. Kiev counterattacked to hold Pokrovsk, asserting its strength and strengthening its morale. Russia was forced to adjust its strategy, focusing more on Pokrovsk to maintain the position. This battle has an impact beyond the borders of Ukraine, affecting global politics, diplomacy, and economics. Finally, if you find this analysis useful and want to follow more stories about history and war around the world, please like, share this video, and subscribe to the History and War channel so that we can continue to bring you the most in-depth, unique, and updated content.